קיבוץ. The city actually we're looking at in this model is Skytopolis. It's the same city in different periods of history. The reason for this city to be here in the first place is its position. It's right in this middle place between the Jordan Valley, where we came from, right? We climbed up coming from the south through the Jordan Valley, and here we're meeting the Jezreel Valley. So the Jordan Valley is going south to north or north to south. It's sort of highway that is going this way. And the other valley, the Jezreel Valley, is going east to west or west to east, connecting these areas here to the shoreline of the land of Israel. Now this is a very, very important intersection or junction of these two highways, because these are not just local highways, these are international highways. We talked already about the fact that the positioning of the land of Israel is right at the center or at this crossroad between three continents. If you want to cross from Africa to Europe, remember we talked about the birds migrating, but also if you want to cross over from the Egyptian Empire over to the Roman or Greek empires, you have to go by land, you have to go through here. More than that, if you want to come from the Eastern civilizations and go along the big rivers of of Mesopotamia, where Iraq is of today, you cannot come in straight line from the east to here, because there is a very vast desert. All Jordan and then the western side of Iraq is very harsh desert. What you have to do is climb up along the big rivers of Iraq till you get to East Syria or like South Turkey, and then start coming down again on this highway that would come eventually here, and then you can cross over. So what makes the history and the archaeology of this country so rich is that is a passageway between all these three continents and all these very ancient civilizations. Everybody that, I'm not talking just of armies marching through, it's also trade and cultural influences, and people were moving. And this is why the country's history and archaeology is so rich, because it's being like a bridge between all these civilizations. And this specific location is a very strategic one, because it connects, it's the junction between the traffic that is coming from the west to the east, and from the east to the west, and also the traffic that is coming from the south to the north, and from the north to the south. So there's a lot of sense positioning yourself here, because you can benefit from all the traffic that is going on, and you can keep an eye on what's going on as well. Another reason for the city to be here from very ancient times is that there is plenty of water here. There is this creek that is running through the city that has water. We saw all these springs coming out there, so this entire area is rich with water. Although it's very hot during the summer, it's rich with water. This is why from very early on there was permanent Egyptian presence here. This hill, which is right over there, at the top of it, this is again, the scale model refers to Skytopolis, the Roman time city, but much before the Romans, the Egyptians were already here. And on the top of this hill, they found ruins of Egyptian posts. Usually, the Egyptians would not keep, permanent presence here. They would come on journeys and collect taxes and punish and all that, but there would be local kings that would control the areas. Talking about 2nd millennia BC in this time frame. Here, they kept a permanent post because of the strategic importance of it. Another example for this permanent post that the Egyptians kept in the country is the port of Jaffa, which is again very strategic point, very ancient port gate to the country, and therefore the Egyptians were there on a permanent basis. And there was a small hill with an Egyptian post. When Saul, we read about Bet Shean in the Bible for the first time, is when Saul, and Saul time is right before David, so it's the 10th century or 11th century BC. is fighting the Philistines. Up here in the valley, he dies in this battle together with his 3 sons. He falls on his sword, he loses the battle, and instead of being killed by the Philistines, he falls on his sword. The Philistines taking him to the walls of Bet Shean, so there is a city back then, and they're nailing his body to the walls. It's a sign of humiliation. We talked already about how in ancient times, it's the almost sort of show of respect is bring somebody to burial, right? It's a very important deed. And the people of the other side of Yavesh Gilad are sneaking over, they're taking the bodies from the wall and then bringing him to burial in their territory over there as a show of respect to the king. They owe him for something he did for them before. It's all sort of biblical history, and the city is already there back then. By the way, those Philistines, that most of the Bible is about this conflict between the Israelites and the Philistines, it's all correlating to the same time. It's at the same time the Israelites are exiting Egypt. This is the Exodus. They're taken by Moses through the... We have another civilization coming to this area. These are the Philistines. Nothing to do with the Palestinians of today. Just to remove any doubt here. I don't think they even them claiming to have any relationship. But this is a civilization that comes probably from the Aegean Sea. And it's about the same time the Israelites are arriving here, and it's the beginning of the decline of the Egyptian Empire. So the Jews or the Israelites could leave Egypt, and those are coming to what had been under the influence of the Egyptian Empire, and those two groups are settling the country side by side. The Philistines are very strong along the shoreline of Israel, where Gaza is today. Gaza is one of these cities, and other several cities, all the way to where Tel Aviv is actually, along the shoreline of Israel. The Israelites are settling mostly the mountain hills, or the Judean mountains, the central ridge of mountains and the seam line between the two civilizations is like the battleground of many of the stories in the Bible. And this goes on for several centuries. And this is the story back then. Then let's fast forward. About 1,000 years after Saul, this place is again, the reasons for it being here are the same, the water and the location here. And there is a semi-independent city here called Skytopolis, which is built in the late Hellenistic period and lasts here for about 1,000 years. This is the city that we're going to visit. Last year through the Roman period, Byzantine period, and comes to a very dramatic end in January, I think it was the 18th, I'm not sure, but it was the beginning of 749. There is one of these catastrophic earthquakes that hit the country, and the city comes to destroyed in one event, in one sort of a few seconds. This long history of 1,000 years of this particular city of Skytopolis, but it goes back further all the way to the cities that preceded it, is coming to an end. And as we're walking the streets of Skytopolis, we're going to see how dramatic it was. We can see one of the signs of it would be that all the pillars of the city fell to the same direction, which shows you that it was a man-made catastrophe. It was a major catastrophe. All the pillars are lining up. This was never built again because back at the mid-8th century, this entire area is not under the Byzantine rule anymore, but under Islam. The Islam arrives to the country, to this part of the world, early on after Islam is like popping up from the Arabic Peninsula at 622, when Muhammad is moving from Mecca to Medina and the Muslim sort of calendar starts. This is the year 0 in the Muslim calendar, 622, the Hijrah, the move of Muhammad from Mecca to Medina. And at the end of this century, the Muslims already control a huge empire that is stretching all the way from the Atlantic Ocean in North Africa all the way to Persia. And this is right at the heart of it. And right after the first caliphs, the first 4 substitutes of Muhammad, the Muslim empire is being divided to 2. There is one that is centered around Mecca and Medina, and there is one that is centered in Damascus, this way. And this falls under the rule of the one that is centered around in Damascus, And this is the backyard. This is of no importance, this area, from their perspective. And there's no central government that has the interest and the ability to rebuild the place. So it's just left as it was after the earthquake in many places. When they excavated the place in the 80s, they found some skeletons of people that died when these pillars fell on them, and they're still under the pillars. They were not able to sort of remove them out and bring them to burial. And it's a very dramatic end to the city, which started to be rebuilt, this area, only in the 50s of the 20th century. So the street of the city that we're going to walk today are the Roman city of Scythopolis. In the New Testament, it's one of the Decapolis. If it rings a bell to anybody, this is an alliance of 10 cities that were somewhat semi-independent towards the Romans. There were Romans in culture and everything else, but politically they were not altogether captured by Rome. And all of the cities are to the east side of the Jordan Valley. This is the only one on the western side. And the city that we're going to visit, therefore, is a Byzantine city. Like any sort of, the foundations are for the Roman era, so like any other Roman city, it would have all the entertainment venues of a distant Roman city. It would have bathhouses, pretty much like what we saw in Masada, but in a different scale, much larger. It would have the hippodrome, which is for horse racing. This is this stretch that later on was removed, and housing was projects were built here. We're going to see this part of this street coming down to the bridge. The bridge still exists over the creek here. So there was a hippodrome for horse racing. There was this area over there, which is a closed arena, and therefore it's two theaters, amphitheater, and this is for the gladiator games. Very brutal sort of form of entertainment that was very popular in the Roman period. And the theater that stands right out there. Theater pretty much is the same idea of what we know today. And they were heavily leaning on the Greek tradition in this sense. They had their own sort of, I don't want to say this without, it's like comparing British television versus American television. Okay? So like more kind of into your face kind of humor and stuff. They had their own style. But in terms of it's like leaning heavily on the Greek. What was the phrase that you taught us just now? That Rome conquered Greece with the sword, and Greece conquered with the culture. With the culture, right. The Romans very heavily sort of leaned on the Greek culture and tradition. So what we're going to do and there is the corridor here, pretty much like we knew in Jerusalem, the main shopping strip. We're going to we are right next to the theater, right? And we're going to walk the main street of the city, all the way to this central plaza where all the public sort of spaces are and temples and stuff. We're going to walk towards this intersection where the road goes up north. This is the road that goes from here up north towards the Golan Heights and Damascus. By the way, maybe the road that was taken by Paul, remember? The road to Damascus? Paul was a very sort of devoted Jew that hunted down the early Christians until on his way to Damascus, he has this revelation, he sees Jesus, and he becomes a very devoted Christian. So the road to Damascus... So we're going to go down to the area of the water, all the bathhouses, and end up at the theater. It's a loop of about 40 minutes or so. You're welcome to take it with me. If you don't want to, you can hang out here. We're all coming back here, and we can go back to the bus.